What's up, guys? Ratha here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create dimples using your Langmuir Titan 25T press brake. So let's jump right into it. But first, let's talk about what type of tooling you're going to need to create these dimples. So most of this is some custom tooling that I created. You can actually find most of these on my website, so make sure to check that out. But let's start with the main guy here. So you have your press tool. This is going to be your upper punch piece, and then you have your 3D printed dimple dies. These are a wide face dimples die that I made to help with deflection or your piece warping during the pressing. And then you're going to also have your I guess you could say this is the lower portion. This is the dimple die holder here. This isn't really necessary, but it does kind of come in handy when you want to center your dimple, 3D printed dimple onto the part. You can actually go on my website, get the files to actually 3D print this. I just made this out of metal, and this was just a more custom one-off. But if you don't want to print this, easier route is to go with 1, 2, 3 blocks. You can go with a 2, 4, 6 block, or you can just get these 1, 2, 3 blocks on Amazon and use this as your platform when pressing the dimple. This way you're not pressing directly on the press brake table. And then you're just gonna have, these are just some test pieces that I made in various thicknesses and material. And today we're gonna be bending 50-52 aluminum and just standard cold roll or hot rolled and pickled oil sheet. I got some 16 gauge, and I also got some 11 gauge in that. And you can see in different hole sizes as well. All right, now that you know what we need, let's get to the next part where we install the press tool and the dimple dies. All right, so the next step is to install the press tool. It's pretty straightforward. Because of the length of the clamping portion, I don't recommend putting it like this. I know normally with bending you kind of want to use the center of the ram, but in this particular case I want to center it with one of the clamping holes where the screw goes, and that's going to help this piece when it does, go down and press the tool. It doesn't want to kick out. I've had that happen before, and it's just because it's insufficient clamping surface area. So highly recommend you use one of these points and just kind of center it with the press tool. Okay, now that we have this properly seated, let's install the lower portion. So if you 3D printed this, I don't offer this on my website just because this thing is really expensive to make. But you can 3D print this 100% PLA infill, and you'll be able to bend, most gauges, I guess. But you'll have to kind of test that out with whatever material and thickness you're using. But you can see this part here has the lower tang to center it, and you go like that, and then you would take your dimple die and center it with your upper press tool. But most people won't have this, so I'm going to do this demonstration just using the 1, 2, 3 blocks, and it'll work fine for most dimple dies up to 3 inches in diameter, maybe more. So turn it like this. You don't want it like this, it'll just fall off. So something like that. Kind of center it, and then you install your press tool. Kind of center it like so, and that's pretty much the setup as far as installing the lower portion and the upper press tool. Now that we have our press tool and our lower dimple and 1, 2, 3 blocks already set up, next is to dive into the programming mode, and I think a lot of people get stuck here. So I'm going to go into it and I'm going to show you how I program a dimple. So the first thing you're going to do is obviously home the machine, and then you're going to go into manual mode. This is where I do all my dimple dyeing. I don't use the jog button and manually do it. I do something a little bit more precise, more controlled, I guess. So the first thing you want to do is, first you can set your tonnage to like 1, but I had it at 5 earlier, depending on what I was bending. But let's set it at 1 first, because I want to show you the setup. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to manually jog the ram so that the lower portion of the press tool presses the upper portion of the die. So let's show that real quick. Okay, so I hit the manual continuous jog button, and now we're going to jog. This is going to jog manually, so what I want to do is take this guy and bring it as close to this particular dimple die size that I'm using. So let's do that real quick. And I'm going to stop it about right there. And then I'm going to go in and do this incrementally now. And you can see this has about maybe a 1/16 of an inch away from the press tool. I'm going to hit cancel because I want to get out of the manual mode. Okay, and then I want to go down incrementally. Let's go incrementally down at 10 thou and hit repeat and ram down. All right, and then I'm going to jog it so that the press tool is like 10 thou right above the dimple die. And obviously as I get closer, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to go to 5 thou, just because I want a finer incremental depth. But for now, let's do 10 thou and run. Okay, you can see that gap that I'm trying to fill up, so let's get closer, and we're just going to keep pressing that jog, and it's going to move closer and closer. See that? So I'm pushing the jog. Once it goes down 10 thou, release, push it again, boom, push it again, and right now you can see I can't move it. So now I'm going to go back up to my monitor and hit cancel, and then now I'm going to move the ramp up 10 thou, and it's a little loose now, right? Then that's perfect, and that's kind of where I want it. You know, you don't want to see any very minimum daylight, I guess. But now I'm going to go and move it to 5 thou incremental and then shift it down. So instead of being the 10 thou, let's go 5 thou, ram down, push my ram down, and I kind of want it to where I feel a slight drag. There you go, I feel a slight drag when I move this across. So now we can let go, and then I'll explain why we did that. Now that we have it set, we can hit cancel. And so what that does is it's telling us the ending ramp position, right? So that's going to be negative 2.8065. So we're going to put that position here, but we have to do some math because we have to account for the thickness of the material. So this guy here is, let's measure this real quick. So this is about 0.077. Okay, remember that? Okay, so we're gonna do some math. So we have our ending ram positioning without the material at 2.8065, and then we have to account for the whatever material that we're bending and the thickness, but more important the thickness. So this was about 0.077, so we're going to minus 0.077, and I like to also minus 10 thou, and that 10 thou here is just some breathing space so that when you're pressing this in the dimple die, it doesn't bottom out and give you that max air code, and then when you get that code, it automatically wants to home your ram, and we're trying to get away from that. And it's possible during this process we're gonna run into that, and when you run into that, I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot that. So let's do the math real quick. So after doing the math, that's 2.7195. This right here is what you're going to input into the manual stroke operation for ending ram position. Is that so? You have your material thickness, and this is just some leeway, just some breathing space, and this is the current ram position without the material in place, pretty much bottoming out without the material. Okay, but this is what we're going to want to input. Okay, so you're going to go into ending ram positioning. You're going to put negative 2.7195. That's what we calculated early on that table. Hit OK. And then now I'm going to show you where you want to put your starting ram position and your safety plane clearance next. So we got this. Now we need to, I'll show you how to input these two. We're going to jog this back up because right now it's bottoming it out, and it's preventing us from, installing our dimple die sheet. So on your monitor, on the far right corner, you'll see this thing called continuous retract jog. Just hold that down. Let me show you guys that real quick. So try to get this in focus, but it's in this corner here. Just jog it up, probably about an inch or so, and this is going to allow us to lift up. So you can see it's not enough for us to, obviously I can slide it out and install it, but I'm gonna retract it a little bit more because I want to be able to take this out without this piece moving. Oh, still stuck. Cool. So now that I can remove this tooling like so, let's install our, this is a 5052 aluminum, 0.077 as far as thickness, like so, and get this guy as center with the upper punches as best as you can. So now that we have our, this is what I would consider our starting positioning, starting ram positioning, I guess, because it's going to allow us to create our dimple and then, take the material out, do the next one like so. So now we have that like that, like so. It's centered. Let's go back up to the monitor real quick, and let me show you the next step. Okay, now that you saw that we moved our ram back up using this continuous retract, you can see where our current position is, negative 1.893. We're actually going to use that number and say, hey, we want that as our starting ram position because we can install our dimple and material without it, without any interference. So make sure to go to starting ram position, negative 1.8793. Hit OK. And this safety plane clearance is any additional clearance you want up. Right now, we don't have any interference, so I would just put that as 0. Just one less step, one less additional height you have to deal with as far as the travel depth. Okay, and then if you want to do repeated dimples, you just hit that guy, hit manual mode, and start pressing your part or dimpling your part. But for this example, we're just gonna do one first because we want to fine tune it. So let's double check. You have your max tonnage set at 1, and I'm doing this on purpose because I want to show you this error code if we run into it and how we can remedy it. Okay, so it's gonna start here and then it's gonna end here. All right, so I'm gonna hit the run manual stroke operation. It's gonna do one stroke, and let's see how this setup works. So hit your foot pedal twice. And you can see it did not travel the full distance to press the dimple, because if it does, it will press it down and then the material will want to go like this and then rebound, and it didn't do that. So what that tells me is I need to increase my ending ram positioning, and that's perfect because this is kind of where you fine tune it. And I like to increase it incrementally about 10 thou until I get the desired dimple, and then that my sheet is flat, I guess, because right now it's bending like that. Okay, so I'm gonna take this ending ram positioning and increase that by 10 thou until I get my desired outcome, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So we're gonna add to that. Then we're gonna add 0.01, so 10 thou, and then we're gonna change that. So we're gonna go negative 2.7295. Okay, and that's gonna be our ending ram position. So that means where the ram is traveling down further, therefore compressing the dimple die further. And probably gonna end up having to do this like 2 more times, and then you're set. That dimple die is set with that material, and you can lock in and save this for a future time. And you can see it's almost correcting itself, but it's still a little slanted or a little. So we're gonna go back to our program and add another 10 thou. And you just slowly start to see this sheet kind of flatten itself back out. And that's the benefit of the wide face dimple. Uh-oh, guess what happened? And this is a perfect example. If you run into this, check that out. We get this max tonnage error, and I'll show you how to fix that. And what that's saying is the pressure that is exerted at the set one ton is maxed out. So it's saying, hey, you're bottoming out and you're maxing out the tonnage based off that depth. Pretty much I'm smashing into it, and the depth is causing the tonnage to increase over one ton. Look at it though, we haven't achieved our flatness of the sheet, meaning that the dimple die is not fully created or formed. But let me show you how to fix that. So when you get that error code, what it's going to tell you to do is, or you got to home this, and that's kind of a annoying thing to have. But don't worry, I'll show you how to dial it in so you don't ever, or so you can avoid that home error. So let's home it. All right. So the easiest thing to do, or the next thing I would do, is simply increase my tonnage. So instead of having at 1, go to 5. And then see how it acts. It's a combination of tonnage and your ending ram positioning. So if your ending ram positioning, let's say you got your tonnage set correctly, and your ending ram positioning is too much for the ram, meaning that it's going down and crashing into the part, and it's going. Let me see if I can explain this. It's going beyond its equilibrium or 0 point. It's going on the negative side of it, or it's compressing it too much. Then you want to adjust your end ram positioning. But in this particular case, I believe it's just the ram tonnage. So let me show you the result now. So go back and hit run manual mode, and let's go see the part. All right, we're gonna bring it down and see if we get a error code, or see if we fixed it. And you can see we did not get an error code. It was successful. So just by increasing the tonnage, that helps. Now you don't have to go to 5, you can go to like 2 or 3 and just see. It all really depends on the material. So you can see it is kind of starting to flatten out, but I'm gonna push it another 10 thou and see what happens, see if I can get this even more straight. Now with dimple dyeing, you're gonna get some warpage, and my goal is to eliminate that with the combination of tweaking it and going with these custom wide face dimple dyes. So I'm gonna go up there now, add another 10 thou to the ending ram positioning. And I think that's it. You can go another 10 thou and see what happens, but that's pretty flat now. Let's take a look at it. Look at that. Look at that. So one benefit of 3D printed dimple dyes is it doesn't leave a mark on your material versus like the steel ones. And I've had the steel ones, but I don't really like how they perform. So I made these. When I say wide face, I just mean a wider face there. And that, I think that wide face helps the sheet material rebound back to its original position. So now I think we are good, and we can continue bending the other two, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. So you can see now that we have our ending ram position tweaked and dialed into that position, we have our starting ram positioning, and you're gonna have to do this for every dimple die, because each one is a little bit different than the others. But once you get all that, I would write it down on a piece of paper and save that, so when you go and press dimple dyes, you can match it. Maybe do an Excel spreadsheet where you say, I'm going to use this dimple dye with this material, this hole size, and you'll be able to figure out your ending and your start ram position and ending ram positioning, like so. All right, so now we're going to repeat it for those other 2 holes. Hit the repeat and hit run manual mode. And that's going to cycle through each one until you're done doing your dimple dies. So there you have it. That dimple die I was using was 1.25 inches, just as a point of reference. But yeah, came out pretty good. One thing to note too with going with a wide face dimple die is you got to account for hole spacing. You'll kind of have to experiment with how far each hole can be placed together, so you have clearance for the dimple die, so it doesn't interfere. These are just kind of a lot wider than normal, but you can get these a little bit closer in, so you don't get any overlap. Let's go with something a little more aggressive. Let's go with some steel and see how that performs. But this is because it's the same thickness. I don't have to change the. I shouldn't have to change the ending round positioning because it's the same thickness. So let's put that in. And let's bend it real quick. See what happens. So this is mild steel. Dimple dyed it, made that dimple no problem. Now you do get a little bit of warpage. See that? So it's not terrible, but something to account for. When I was using the steel ones, it would just, the warpage was terrible, and that's why I went and decided to get these 3D printed dimple dies made. And look at the wear on that dimple die. Really not much on a 3D printed part with creating this dimple with steel. Pretty cool. All right, I know that was kind of a lot tweaking here and there, but like I said, once you dial it in on that particular hole thickness, material, and upper and lower dimple die setup, you can save that starting and ending ramp positioning for that particular situation, and then, like I said, create an Excel spreadsheet, and you'll have that locked in and saved somewhere. That's the cool thing about this press brake is you can do that. Now, one drawback is it doesn't act like a traditional shop press where most of the time when you're creating these dimples, you have a shop press and it presses it, and then it sandwiches it almost like a forging press where it sandwiches the part and goes beyond and it kind of deflects the part. One drawback with this particular press brake is it doesn't do that, and the reason why is because there's some safety features built in where if it does do that, it says, hey upper ramp, don't crash into the table. If you do, we're gonna throw an error and tell you to home it. So that's kind of a safeguard, because honestly this press brake isn't really built for that particular purpose, but I've made it to where I've used that particular press tool to not only do dimples, but I've used it to also press in bearings that I've made, and doing it the same way in the manual mode, setting the starting and ending. I never go into the jog mode and just jog it by manually, because there's not a lot of control there, especially when you have a machine like this. You can go in and set it and fine tune it on the way I did it. And that's just one way I do it. I'm sure there's a few other ways to do it. But yeah, and to kind of end the video, I'll kind of show you some of the cool stuff I've done with dimple dyeing. I made this little, I guess you can call it a holder for my thermal rolls that I get from UPS. So when I print labels, it prints out, and I have this roll that holds this holder that holds this giant roll. So here's my roll, and you can see created these dimples, and just kind of wanted a thermal printer roll holder that looked kind of cool. And then you got this piece that goes in like so. So go like that, and something like that. So when it prints my labels, shipping labels, they'll just roll on that. But yeah, so you can see there's a lot of different applications that you can use dimples for, not just structurally, but just cosmetically as well. But other than that, that's it for me today. Time to get back to work. See you guys in the next one. Later.